morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to Let's Be Frank. Today we're kind of following on from where our what if scenario went last week. And I wanted to talk a little bit about having tough conversations, because I thought that that's where my desire to have other people read my mind comes from, is my inability to enunciate, express, say what I'm really thinking and feeling to someone when it comes to kind of the tough conversations.
I've also been thinking about your superpower and how good that would be to be able to understand. But I don't want a one-way.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be both ways.
But then one of the things we mentioned was that it takes the conversation. Like, would we all just sit here and not say anything and just be reading each other's thoughts?
Yeah, but I think that in that case, because the reason that you want that is you want to get rid of the other people thinking that what you're saying is not what you really believe, or how you mean, what you mean, or how you feel, or any of those things. And you think that by giving people access to your mind and your thoughts, that that would kind of settle that.
Yeah.
You would know. But then you also said that you change your mind quite often.
Yes.
But don't you think that if we all have that superpower, that the same thing will happen? It'll be cool for a while. It'll get a lot of people in trouble very quickly as well.
Yeah.
But don't you think that the same thing will then happen, to say, well, now that you know that you can read my mind, I am training my mind and deliberately thinking certain things.
Yeah.
And that's not really how I feel.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that is really possible.
Yeah, like they don't think about the pink elephant. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's possible, but I think it can potentially happen.
Yeah.
So you're just replacing the conversation and the complexities of that.
Yeah.
You're taking that one step back. I don't know if I'm making myself clear now. But so you said that the reason why you wanted the superpower, or you want to give other people access to your
my mind, yeah.
I wonder how long it'll take you before you go, this is not working for me. I want to be able to think what you think as well.
Yes, yeah, I would want it to work both ways. But the reason is, I think, so that someone understands my intention. Because I feel like my words don't always express my intention. Yeah, what I'm really thinking and feeling, I think my words don't come out in the way that I want them to or intend them to.
So don't you think that people, generally, people who at least know you a little bit, will know whether you're authentic or not? I say I mean in general.
So. Yeah.
So if I talk to somebody who I know, I have a good sense of whether this person is authentic, or whether there's a chance of them just saying something because they don't want to hurt your feelings, or don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation or something like that.
Yeah. So that's, a lot of it relies on how other people respond to what you're saying.
But we also know and understand that how people respond is their problem.
Yeah, it's the line of insanity. It's out of our control. We can't control how someone else responds. Yeah.
So it's about the ability to, so what you're saying is, well, how do I get better at having difficult or uncomfortable conversations?
Yeah.
And I think there are a couple of things to consider there. The one is, well, how do I not get anxious?
Mm.
Am I too concerned or too worried about what the other person will
Yeah.
think or say?
Yeah.
Their perception, will they actually say what they feel,
Yeah.
and how they will react? I think that's a skill that one can learn.
This is something I've been struggling with for a long time. I emailed my parents at the age of 24 years old to tell them I'd gotten a tattoo because I was too scared to tell them in person.
Yeah.
So
Now look,
that's
it
the other
is,
thing I was saying is that I find it much easier to express myself in an email when I've got time and I can reread it and I can make sure that it's coming across the way I want it to come across. And there I also find it easier because there's no response from someone while I'm trying to tell them my full story. Where I feel like as soon as I start talking to someone face to face, how they react, how their face reacts, the things they say while I'm telling it changes what I wanted to say. So that's why I also prefer to write an email. So like I say, when I was 24 years old, I got my first tattoo. I waited a few months and then I drafted an email to my mom and dad to tell them.
Because you anticipated the
disappointment.
the disappointment in your mother's face, or whatever it was, and the how could you, and why, and so that's kind of like removing yourself a little bit from the conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's easier not to have to look in someone's eyes when you're having a difficult conversation.
Or is it easier for you?
Yes.
And not.
Yeah. So I after I pressed send on that email, I waited anxiously for the response, and I was terrified about it, whether they were crying or whether they were telling people that their daughter was a failure, or what response are they? I had all these pictures in my head of how they were responding to the news that I'd given them. So I suppose maybe in that sense it would have been better, because I didn't give them enough credit. They were super chilled and they said you're an adult and you can do whatever you want. But
so you had to live with that anxiety for a period of time, whether that's time. Half an hour or
it was quite a long. It was a few hours.
So I think that's really it. We've spoken before about Sam Harris and lying, and the fact that we often tell these lies, or we're not authentic because we don't want to put ourselves in that uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
And I think for me the similarities, or at least what I believe is when you have, and it depends on the degree of difficulty of the conversation that you're going to have, is to obviously be prepared.
Yeah.
So, and that equates to kind of like writing that draft
email. Yeah.
So like any email of that kind of nature, don't write it and send it immediately.
Yeah.
Park it in drafts, and you have a cup of coffee, or you sleep on it and you reread it, and you try to catch those areas in your email where, well, what if you perceive this in a different way to what I intend here?
Yeah.
Or what if you misunderstand what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
And you just try to get clear in terms of the really difficult part is that thing of when you start that conversation is to then not back down and not be swayed by that kind of
the
that look of
the
disappointment and the offense. In other words, back to the thing that's completely out of your control.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so what about bringing it into a work context a little bit? So tough conversations about pulling up your socks or asking for a raise or things like that, like the difficult conversations that you have in a work environment.
So look, I think it's about starting the conversation in the right way. Be clear about what the conversation is about. Have your facts ready.
Mm-hmm.
Because in any of these, or any difficult conversation, whether it's in a workplace or not, we know it's going to be emotionally charged.
Yeah.
So how do you make sure that you don't get too emotionally charged in a conversation like that? Really make sure that whoever you're having that conversation with understand that, you know, this is in the best interest of both parties.
That's like our pot principle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that obviously that you're also willing to listen to the other person's viewpoint about something. So if I say to you, well, you know what, you must really pull up your socks. And that's not a tough conversation. That's just an accusation. There are no facts. It doesn't help us resolve whatever the situation is. But if I come to you and say to you, listen, you did this piece of work, I think it's really not up to standard because of the following reasons. Give me some context here. And then it becomes a lot more of a conversation. And not, I don't know what is the correct word, not just the judgment and get out of here, go fix it, without listening to the other person. So I think there are also some tough conversations where you just want to say what you want to say and not get into a conversation.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things I was going to ask practically. Do you think it's important to say, just be quiet and listen to me, and then you'll have a chance to talk? Or do you think that it should be a conversation where two people are?
So I think that one must establish kind of principles. So there's a couple of books. I mean, Radical Candor is one that come to mind. Fierce Conversations. Fierce Conversations probably, I don't know, 10, 12 years old. There's also Fierce Leadership, you know, where there's really volumes written about how to have this conversation, you know. Do I just call you in here and say, listen, pull up your socks, or do I set up a time with you and say, hey, listen, I want to talk about the following.
Yeah.
And obviously how you frame that is quite important.
Yeah.
The mistake I've made quite a lot, and I still catch myself making it unintentionally, is to just say to somebody, hey, come see me tomorrow morning.
Yes. I've had one of those. And then for the next 24 hours you're thinking, what did I do? What did I do?
Yes. So I try to be very aware of that and not do that, because that obviously also adds to the anxiety, especially if it's in a workplace scenario. But make sure that there's enough context, you know, so that you know what this conversation is going to be about. So if I say to you, well, please come chat to me tomorrow morning about this piece of work that you did, I mean, chances are you're going to know that, well, you know what, that was really a shitty piece of work. And you probably also know why. And therefore you can come, you can either get yourself all worked up in terms of how am I going to defend myself, or how am I going to explain this, but at least you also have an opportunity to kind of go through those emotions and hopefully then turn up with either a rational explanation or in a better frame of mind to have that conversation.
Yeah. Do you think you should schedule personal conversations? So I've got an example of this because it probably needs an example. So an old colleague of mine, I remember seeing her diary, and she had scheduled a financial chat with her partner, her fiance, and that was in their diary, and they had a plan to talk about their finances and something like that. Do you think that's something that you should do for tough conversations, is actually schedule the time in the diary to talk about it? Or say, can we chat at 5 o'clock tonight about XYZ?
So look, it's very much what works for the parties involved.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some people do that because they've got very busy schedules, whatever the case may be, and it works well for them to schedule that time.
Yeah.
The same way that people will schedule date night. You know, just make sure that it's in the calendar and that you don't arrange anything else or say yes to anything else during that time. And for other people, it could be as simple as, you know, when we need to have this conversation about finances, can we do it at 5 o'clock this afternoon?
Yeah.
Get the other person's buy-in, because none of us like to be kind of blindsided into a tough conversation like that. I think that's probably the most important thing. Because if we go back to the how do our brains work, you know, the first thing that'll happen is the fight or flight, you know, so we'll kind of become defensive.
Yeah.
I think if you really have a very good relationship with somebody, over time you'll know, even when you're kind of surprised by a conversation like that, that okay, well, we know each other well enough. I don't have to, or that instinct won't kick in.
Yeah.
And you can get into the conversation a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But I really recommend, I mean, just finding a little framework that works, and whether it's the radical candor, just the name of it kind of says, well, Sam Harris, don't lie.
Yeah.
You know, understand that some conversations are going to be uncomfortable for a little while. But find a little framework, something about how do I prepare for this? How do I let this other person know that I want to talk about the following?
Yeah.
And that it is going to be a conversation. You know, so really suggest just finding a simple little framework. And it's maybe something that we can do here, like we've got a pot principle, and kind of like, okay, cool, when you set up a meeting and the agenda has got to be X, Y, and Z, which we're really getting slack with.
Yeah.
But to do something like that, and maybe, you know, try it out in our environment.
Yeah.
We do have to have tough conversations from time to time. And really try that, and I think if you do that in a friendlier environment, and you can test it with less uncomfortable conversations, it'll just help you and train you, and get you to the point where you are more comfortable to have those conversations.
Cool. Well,
but if you can organize the whole mind reading thing, I'll appreciate that.
Is it someone on it? Who have we got? I don't know, Tesla.
Probably, probably Elon Musk is on it, somebody's on it,
Cool, thanks guys.
Okay.
Thanks.